And Ryan Mujanel, the head coach at Providence, was like, he told Montgomery, the game against Toronto was the best game they've seen him play, like beyond anything he's done in Providence. Like maybe he's just a guy that elevates to another level against NHL competition, which if you're the Bruins, you will take, because if he has more games like that, you've got another top 4 guy and already arguably the best D-core in the NHL.
And again, for 6'5", he's a great skater.
Yeah.
Like, that's another thing I think that, when you look at his skill set, right? Like, and I think in the D zone, his stick is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, the way that he's able to close in on guys and kind of put stick on puck. I know it sounds really easy, but a lot of guys aren't good at it. And, the fact that he can kind of shut guys down doing that while also keeping up with them. Chara was 6'9", but he wasn't like the greatest skater in the world. He was fine. I'm not saying he was bad or anything, but like his reach would save him a lot. Guys would cut him, try to cut in, and his reach would stop him. The fact that Lohrei, again, I'm not comparing Chara and Lohrei here, but the fact that Lohrei can stay stick on stick and keep up with those players, I think is huge.
Poke the Bear is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 175, presented by our good friends over at FanDuel. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Connor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. And I'm doing better than those Leafs. Ooh, not having a good one. Didn't have a fun one on Thursday night. You know who really didn't have a fun one on Thursday night?
Who's that?
Tyler Bertuzzi.
Oh, really?
Tough start to the season.
Think he regrets signing that 1-year deal?
Little bit. And it's funny, I was talking about this on Bruins Beat with Pete Blackburn, which I recorded legitimately 5 minutes ago before we started recording this.
Put in work, Evan.
Oh, yeah. I'm just going all day talking. It was pretty well documented that his camp sort of mishandled, fumbled the bag, as the kids like to say, around free agency. And sort of had a deal from the Bruins and then said, we can get better somewhere else. And when they came back, Bruins are like, actually, we're all set. And, we don't always praise Don Sweeney on this show. And again, it's only been a month in Toronto. It's only been a month, so I don't want to, I don't want to make any official statements. But I think the Bruins might have made the right choice. So far, looking like that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? He only played 11 minutes last night. I'm trying to remember what the Sheldon Keefe quote was, but it was like, we had a simple game plan and he didn't execute it, is what he said after the game yesterday. So, I mean, between that, you already have Leafs fans that are now pissed about like him laughing on the bench when Marchand was going back and forth with Reeves.
I've seen that.
I think it was Elliot Friedman on Friday on his 32 Thoughts thing was like, yeah, it's like not been a good fit at all so far. So again, like whoever you want to point fingers to, whether if you wanted the Bruins to sign him, which again, they were not going to trade Linus Ullmark for pennies on the dollar to accommodate a guy like Bertuzzi. When they offered him a deal and his agent pretty much tried to play hardball with a team that was already way up against the cap, that was going to have to give up multiple pieces anyway, which you saw with Taylor Hall. Like, try to play games with that. And again, the Bruins couldn't be in a spot where they could wait things out. Like, if you were going to wait for Bertuzzi to come back to you 2 days later, you were going to have to sign 4 or 5 like Danton Heinen level contracts. Like, again, they didn't break the bank by any means, but you had so many roster spots to fill that you needed to sign guys that were going on day one, like a Geeky or a Shattenkirk, or, Lucic probably who's always going to be here, right? But like there's a lot of these guys.
Lucic would have been here for like Stop and Shop gift cards.
Right. But like you were going to have a lot of guys who I think the Bruins, and so far we've seen it, were going to offer really good value that were going to be gone. Like someone else would have grabbed JVR for 1 year, $1 million, like Shattenkirk, all these guys. Like you needed to go out there and shore up your roster with guys that weren't going to break the bank. So you weren't in the spot, if you're the Bruins, to wait things around and see whatever trump card that Bertuzzi's clearly not that fucking great agent is waiting to drop on them. So again, you can kind of decide who you want to point fingers to. It does take 2 to tango, but so far it looks like a massive fumble from Bertuzzi in his camp in terms of how it's been. Again, all it takes is one game, a couple of games to heat up there, but so far it seems like it's just not worked out that well. And whether it's the offense, the defense has been lacking, which has been kind of a red flag in the past, right, with him, even during that playoff series where he was so good for the Bruins. Does not look good right now, whether it's those guys, whether it's Max Domi, all these players, all these guys that I had to like look at like the roster sheet like 10 times yesterday to be like, who I know the usual suspects on Toronto, but I was looking at the rest of their forward core. So far, it hasn't worked out. Switch a lot of that roster around, but it's still kind of the same things keep on sprouting up for that team.
Same old Leafs. It's interesting. Pete Blackburn was saying this to me, and I thought it was a good point. In Boston, he was a supplementary piece, right? He was an addition. He was not a guy that you needed to drive play. He was someone who could just, can you play responsibly enough on the wings? Can you tip some pucks in front? Can you produce? All those things. I think the expectations in Toronto were, maybe, you're not going to be the guy, but you're going to be close to being the guy, and you're going to add a lot of scoring with Matthews and Marner. And by the way, Willie Nylander looked great on Thursday night. But it's interesting, though, because, on paper, we talked about this in the offseason, and we kind of prepared our listeners for this. Bertuzzi's going to put up 30 goals and 60 points and up in Toronto. But, anybody would in that situation. And I think so far we've seen that you got to have the details right. We've talked a lot about details early on this season with Patra, and Bertuzzi kind of lacks those. And you mentioned it. We saw it in the playoffs last year. There were a lot of missed assignments. Bertuzzi would contribute to 2 goals at one end, but then, kind of be lost in space for 2 in his own. And so, I go back to, we discussed this a little bit at the end of last year, and I think we were both on the same page of, it'd be great if you could bring Bertuzzi back, but also, there is a downside. This is not a foolproof addition or a foolproof signing. There is a downside to him that could rear its head if you sign him long term, and I think teams are now seeing it. It's well documented that, his value, what he might get on his next deal, is going to be a lot less than what he would have gotten this offseason.
Yeah, maybe he should have signed the deal the Bruins first had for him. I believe it's called fuck around and find out, right?
Exactly. That old guy with the whiteboard where he's like, he fuck around and now he's finding out. So,
yes.
But who is what we're finding out right now, Connor?
Fat Evan. Good segue.
We are finding out that Mason Lohrei is quite good. Damn good, I would say. Now it's been one game. It's been one game. Yeah, dynamite. Montgomery was just dropping bombs, dynamite after the game. It's one game, but it's a pretty damn big game. Thursday night, ESPN Plus prime time.
Everyone's trying to find their password. Yeah. I'm not gonna do the Mike Felger routine, but I had quite a few. I think everyone in the press box was getting quite a few tweets asking people as if we were a Hulu tech support. I empathize with everyone who's in that spot. I'm very sorry. As someone who watches some games on NESN 360 and the stream breaks, it's frustrating, but I can't fix it. I'm very sorry, people.
I saw Jeff Israel make up a letter that he sent to Gary Bettman allegedly, with a picture of his TV screen not working. But that's what sucks. I do feel for people because there are, for any demographic. I think it's not just older folks. It's anybody. I mean, it's a complicated thing, and it's extra money on top of it. I get why ESPN is doing that because they want people to subscribe to ESPN Plus. But it's annoying. That's a big game that you do want everybody to see, and I don't want to go down this road because I think we could probably do a whole show on this. But I do feel for people on this because it is really annoying. When Hulu breaks down, again, it's not a Bruins-Ducks game. It's Bruins-Leafs. It only happens a couple times a year, and it was a great hockey game. It was a great game on Thursday night. But Lohrei looked really good. Lohrei looked really solid. What did you note? What did you like in his game last night?
Yeah, I mean, I think the traits that we've seen and heard about him as to why he's a blue-chip prospect, the offensive touch there, the playmaking was really good in transition, was hitting guys on the tape, really, again, limiting those mistakes that can happen in a hurry against a team like Toronto that can make you pay in a split second. Really, really sound in that area. Shot first mentality, which I think the Bruins have been lacking on that decor. Something Montgomery has stressed, so he's been a really strong start for him in that regard. But I think probably the biggest surprise is just how solid he was in his own end. Again, he's not perfect. He's still learning on the fly. It is a hell of a matchup against guys like Matthews and Marner and Tavares and all these guys. So it's not easy by any means. And I think the more he plays, the more you'll see those lapses, which happen to even the most seasoned defensemen out there. But I think overall his instincts in the D zone, making simple, smart plays to clear the puck out, making those sound first passes. Was really good on the PK, I thought. I had two stick plays to really kind of knock the puck away from Bertuzzi in two spots there. Like, I think that's what's really encouraging. Like, we know.
He overpowered Bertuzzi.
Yeah.
I mean, he sunned Bertuzzi.
So, I mean, like, we know what his offensive capabilities are and something that he could probably carve out a career just being a third pairing, sheltered 5-on-5 power play kind of guy. But, like, if he's able to eat into the PK and play 20 minutes a night, then you got something special there. I think it's something we've already talked about, right? Like, his floor is that third pairing special teams guy, and his ceiling is like, I don't know, John Carlson, right? Like, that's what I've always mentioned is like a 6'4", 55, 60-point guy that can play 20 minutes a night. And you saw, again, not saying that's what he's going to be, but you saw glimpses of it, right? And I think that makes the world of a difference, right? There's a lot of defensemen in the league that are really gifted playmakers. Not a lot that can play 20-plus minutes in this 6'5". So really encouraging. I think, again, feel like this whole season so far, we've preached patience with these younger players like Patra and, Beecher and now Lohrei of like, all right, these guys don't rush them, but kind of proven us wrong because every time they've been in these lineups, they're carving out spots. And I even asked Montgomery on Friday, like, what'd you hear from Providence in terms of like how his D-zone play is coming along? And Ryan Muginel, the head coach at Providence, was like, he told Montgomery, the game against Toronto was the best game they've seen him play, like beyond anything he's done in Providence. Like maybe he's just a guy that elevates to another level against NHL competition, which if you're the Bruins, you will take, because if he has more games like that, you've got another top 4 guy and already arguably the best D-core in the NHL.
And again, for 6'5", he's a great skater.
Yeah.
Like, that's another thing I think that, when you look at his skill set, right? Like, and I think in the D zone, his stick is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, the way that he's able to close in on guys and kind of put stick on puck. I know it sounds really easy, but a lot of guys aren't good at it. And, the fact that he can kind of shut guys down doing that while also keeping up with them. Chara was 6'9", but he wasn't like the greatest skater in the world. He was fine. I'm not saying he was bad or anything, but like, his reach would save him a lot. Guys would cut him, try to cut in, and his reach would stop him. The fact that Lohrei, again, I'm not comparing Chara and Lohrei here, but the fact that Lohrei can stay stick on stick and keep up with those players, I think is huge. And you saw, even just, the way he's able to join the rush, I think is so encouraging. Again, that's nothing new. Like that was in the preseason. We've seen that at Ohio State. That's nothing that's, that was added to his game in the last 3 weeks. But I think just the confidence that he was able to show was so impressive. But again, I go back to like 0 high danger chances against in his 17-34 5-on-5 time is freaking crazy. And to do that against, and again, like the goal that went in when he was out there, I wouldn't put it on him. I know it went off his stick, but like Marner's nasty, cuts middle. I thought Carlo could have done a little better of a job there, kind of taking away the middle, even though he basically did. Marner's just so gifted that he kind of just whoop right to the middle. But I mean, he looks good. Yeah. Like it's going to be a hard guy to try to send down because he seems to have carved out a role. We'll talk kind of long-term stuff, but first, quick word from our sponsor.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use and you can bet on everything from spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And frankly, that's the best part about FanDuel, that you can bet on anything. You want to bet on how many touchdowns Mac Jones is going to throw this year? Be my guest. Maybe how many goals David Pastrnak is going to score. Go for it. You can really do it all. So bet now on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
So Lohrei looked really good. And, again, it's not surprising at all. We said when he went down to Providence at the beginning of the year, and we were both pro, hey, go down to Providence, work on the D zone, work on structure, work on assignments, things like that. We said, hey, he's going to be up at some point this year. Yeah. Like, that's pretty much a foregone conclusion. Now he's up. And by the way, Witherspoon I thought was solid last night. Led the team in hits.
Yeah.
Mitchell was fine. I thought the real guy on D that kind of, and I think I texted you and Ty about this, Shattenkirk had a rough night. And
I think Lindholm played a shit ton of minutes, so I mean, give him credit there, but he wasn't. He's still, I think, waiting to kind of hit that other gear. I think the Bruins are kind of waiting for. It doesn't seem like Montgomery and those guys are panicking yet, but that is something worth noting. Is like you need over the stretch, you don't need like Lindholm from last year in October, November when McAvoy was out and he was going ham. Like, dude looked like a Norris frontrunner there.
Are you worried about him? 0 points in 10 games. I'm not worried, but there are times he does seem to try to do too much.
Yeah, I think it's all about simplifying. And again, I don't know if he's going to be the player he was last year over these next couple of years of a 50-point guy. But if he can give you 35, 40 and play 22 minutes and just be solid, then I think you'll take that as being another anchor of your decor. So I think the points are going to come. It's all about, I think, the priority is just continuing to be a really strong shutdown guy. And I mean, who knows? Hell, if Lohrei's around here long term and you put him and Carlo together, then maybe you put him McAvoy into a super pairing that helps out both parties there as well. So time will tell there. But I'm not really too worried about him yet. He's, I think, got enough of a track record, especially here in Boston, that I think you'll expect him to kind of right the ship there in terms of his maybe offensive game.
Yeah, I agree. Lohrei, though, it's an interesting idea, I think, long term. I mentioned this a little bit on Bruins Beat, but, NHL's copycat league. Size matters on defense these days, and it's an interesting addition. And I think a lot of people have been talking about Matt Grzelcyk, right? That's the guy that people even labeled at the beginning of the preseason. Is Lohrei Grzelcyk's replacement? I like Grzelcyk a lot. I do. I think he adds a lot to your team at 5-on-5. You just look at his usage in the playoffs the past couple of years, and you just wonder, what's the fit here? If Lohrei continues on this track, and Grzelcyk comes back in, early December, does Grzelcyk have a spot? Is it time to deal him if he gets back and Forbert's there and, then you're good. You've got 3 left shot guys. Like, what happens then? Yeah,
I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see how they prioritize the skill sets. And again, it all comes down to if Lohrei's ready, right? So if we're going to assume that he's sticking up here and he's a guy that's sitting with Carlo, then it all comes down to how you want to kind of comprise the rest of your decor, right? Because again, I'm also a big Grzelcyk guy, so I think especially at 5-on-5 play, like he can impact whatever pairing he's with. Again, you have those questions about how he is in the playoffs, what have you. It also depends on what kind of return you could get if you were to deal him. But it's always puzzling, right? Because like this year especially, Montgomery I think has been really high on Grzelcyk. He's talked about how he's trusting him more with PK reps. In terms of that shot first mentality that Lohrei has shown, Montgomery said a few days ago, the only guy that has really consistently done that of being really aggressive in the offensive zone has been Grzelcyk amongst the defensemen. So like he's been really pleased with what they've had from him so far. But if he's going to not play in the playoffs again, in a few months, then what's it all worth, right? Like I could see a scenario where maybe he's your third pairing guy back to where he was. Back to where he was in like 2019. Maybe that's where he's best suited. And maybe Forbert's your 7th D, the guy you can bring in, switch things around if the series gets heavier or what have you. Like maybe that's a scenario you deal with. Or even like Grzelcyk can shift to the right side if you think he's a better player than Shattenkirk. Like it's kind of not the same thing as Ullmark, right? Reigning Vezina trophy winner. But I also don't think you're moving a guy like Grzelcyk who is versatile, can do a lot, has, been really strong this year so far. Like that's not a guy I think you just cast off unless you're getting a really nice draft pick or anything back. Like I don't think they're in a rush to like Grzelcyk's off LTIR. You got to move him or you got to like push a guy like Forbert out there. Like I think if those are your 7D, you got a very good problem on your hands, right? And I think Grzelcyk's a guy that even maybe his role is lessened and he ends up averaging 16 minutes a night instead of 18 or what have you, and he's more in a third pairing spot. Like he can still bring value, I think, wherever you put him. But it is a really good problem to have because if Lohrei is eating up those minutes, and again, you would think that maybe Forbert's safe in that spot because how good he's on the PK, but like if Lohrei is eating these PK minutes and is looking good there, and that's a role for him to get more ingrained into the system, like that could put him in that same spot of being a guy that could be on the outside looking in. So it's going to be really fascinating, but interesting to see just where those pieces fall. Because again, there's no like really right way to do it or no way that's like the I think everyone can agree will be the consensus on how to move, even though I'm sure there'll be a lot of very vocal people on Twitter who are like, just trade Grzelcyk. Trade Grzelcyk for a fifth. It's like, no, he still brings an awful lot of value, even if Lohrei's playing well.
There's no rush to deal him.
No.
It's not like this is the trade deadline. It's not like there's, a team, on the other end of the line saying, we'll give you a first round pick for Grzelcyk. Then in that case, yeah, but that's not happening. I would be fascinated to see a Forbort Grzelcyk pairing. And again, we'll see what ends up happening when he returns. It's not for almost, at least basically a month. But I'd be curious to see what that looks like. Him potentially running the power play instead of Shattenkirk, or Lohrei jumps in. That's another area of Lohrei's game I'm curious to see. He's a very good offensive guy. When does he sort of start to get the keys to that second unit? If he continues on this track record, I'm not saying it's one game. We do have to temper our expectations a bit. But again, if he continues on this track, at some point he's going to get those keys. So again, I think, it's a good problem to have. Also, injuries happen. Injuries take place. And I think that's another thing. You're already seeing it. Forbort was out Thursday. McAvoy was suspended. What did you think of the 4 games?
Not really surprised. I thought maybe 2 or 3, but I mean, it's a play you just can't have happen. I understand heat of the moment, what have you, but high hit, clear contact, guys down. Can't have that happen, right? I think that's been more or less the consensus. I know there's maybe a few dissenting opinions there, but wasn't really surprised. I saw 4 games, I was oh, but it wasn't the punishment or anything like that was out of the realm of, if it was a 10 game, I'd be oh shit. But for the way that play kind of played out, not really surprised, even if maybe it was a little bit steeper than I initially thought.
Yeah, I don't know. Part of me thought he might get a teeny bit more, but 4 is 4. I mean, again, I thought it was a dumb play. Can't do that.
Especially 2 minutes after you scored a goal. It was Leroy Jenkins. He just literally scored a goal, had a great play, and then it was woo! And can't do that to Oliver Ekman-Larsson.
It was like that Simpsons meme where who is it? Is it Bart getting thrown through? No, it was Ralph getting thrown through the window, right?
Through the window, yeah. It's always it's always a great tweet.
It is. I always want to use it, but I'm that's Connor's thing. I can't impart on that.
Please use it.
The Simpsons, I have not watched The Simpsons in a long time, but I got back into The Simpsons with their Halloween specials, and I laughed a lot, and I forgot how funny The Simpsons can be.
Vintage Simpsons is right up there, man. It's
goated.
One of the goated, yeah.
I loved it when I was little, and then I just kind of got away from it as I got older, and I saw some of the newer seasons, and I was nah. But old Simpsons is hilarious, and I will never not laugh at Homer Simpson. It's impossible not to. So I gotta get back into The Simpsons because it's a good show. And Halloween drew me back in. One other thing from Thursday night, Jake DeBrusk, first goal of the season. Good to see him get going. What can this do for his confidence? Because it feels like he's about to maybe go on a little streak.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the track record. He's got a very interesting resume or a stat line over the years that I think, he's had these peaks and valleys before, but almost always when he's had a drought, he gets that one goal and he goes on a heater. Even last year, I was looking at it, and I think we all agreed probably last season was his most consistent. But he still had I think late February through the middle of March, he had 7 games without a goal, right? So even last year when I think he was the most dialed in, these things do happen. Then he then goes through a stretch right after that. I think he had 5 goals in 8 games, including goals in 4 straight games. This happens. It's all about kind of getting that first bounce or that first opportunity. That was a great play. Even that pass to Marchand to kind of set it up was great. I think that was probably DeBrusk's best game in terms of just, again, when he's moving his feet, when he's driving wide and putting guys on their heels and driving to the net, make things happen on the forecheck, that's what he's got to do, right? Because you can see how impactful he can be in the offensive zone when he's really moving like that. But listen, we can talk about these guys like Poitras and Lohrei and Beecher, and they've been huge, and it's really exciting to see. But you also need these stalwarts up front to be the guys that I think are most responsible for consistently generating offense. And you need a guy like DeBrusk to really start landing punches there. So you hope a game like Thursday where, he's really playing confident, playing to his strengths and finally gets rewarded. Keep on doing that more and more. Again, we mentioned this every single time we talk about DeBrusk, what he needs to do. drive to the net, the chances are going to be there. So hopefully he's able to build off of that.
And I'm fascinated, this shootout move he does it every time. Now, we watch every game, so I guess we're used to it, but I am always shocked goalies aren't just like this with their blocker as DeBrusk is coming down on them. Just like this. Like, it's coming. All right, fine, you're going to give me the lower part of the net. But it's a filthy move. Like, we always talk about Pastrnak. And rightfully so, right? Like, just outstanding moves. You never know what he's going to do. Obviously, with DeBrusk, he's done this like 100,000 times. But to make it look that easy, like, that is a hard play. And to always get it in that top right corner of the net is so impressive to me. But again, I guess that's why he's in the NHL. I agree with you, though. I think, real quick question. Who would you rather have for the next 5 years? We're going to play this game. Ready? Jake DeBrusk or Tyler Bertuzzi?
I'd probably take DeBrusk. I think he's a more complete player. And you need to have more consistent scoring, but what he does on the PK, his defensive game, which I think has made a lot of strides beyond the consistency in the offensive zone, he's probably the more complete player. Again, like, he can sometimes drive you crazy. He has to set an extra alarm or two, but in terms of, I think, how he can impact a game and plays into what the Bruins' core strength is. Like, Bertuzzi, everyone loves him, right? He's got the long hair. He's missing a tooth. He looks like a typical Bruin. But in terms of, like, the bedrock of their success now, which is defensive accountability in their own zone, good on the rush, I think DeBrusk kind of fits more into what exactly they need. So
when Tyler Bertuzzi isn't producing, what's he doing? That's the real question, right? Like, when Jake DeBrusk is
laughing at Martian jokes on the bench. Well, Ryan Reeves does nothing. But can we also let me just say one thing? It's already funny how like Toronto beefs up their whole roster, and like that's like the new change in leadership is all these guys, and then they clearly have a bone to pick with Martian off of that play, which is unfortunate. You really hope Liljegren's hopefully back soon, even though it didn't really look good. But
terrible
talking the whole time on the bench and like keeps pissed afterwards. What do they do?
Nothing.
Same old.
And
it's the same shit every year, Evan.
No, it is. And I also go back to, like, Reeves is a tough guy who is not good at hockey. Yes. So they can't put him out there. Like, he's a tough guy.
Like, then
nothing happened. And again, by the way, I don't think that play was dirty by Marchand. I didn't see the trip. I didn't see the dirty, the part of that play that was dirty. I know Toronto people disagree with me there.
A penalty, but it shouldn't have been people clamoring for a suspension or what have you. Like, no.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah.
We hope he's back.
It wasn't classic Marchand or anything. I agree with you. And, again, I think it goes back to Bertuzzi's comments before the game being like, oh, he's full of shit. It's funny. I know he's a good guy. So I'm wondering if it was that. Mm-hmm. But, like, at least kind of act mad, man. Like, you're getting demoted to the fourth line. You're not playing well. You're sitting at the end of the bench. And you're chuckling at that. Like, especially in a market like Toronto, like, at least look angry, like, I know she shook his head and everything, and you don't want to read too much into that stuff. But I agree with you. I go back to Jake DeBrusk when he's not producing is still at least able to play on the PK, able to produce, or not produce, but, get to dirty areas and play responsible hockey. So I would take DeBrusk. It's close, but I would take Jake DeBrusk. I think we kind of hit everything. Did we miss anything? I don't think we did.
I think that's kind of the big point from that game. Again, there's always a lot of takeaways from Toronto, but again, beyond that, another really strong win for a team that continues to kind of push I don't know how many more goalposts people want to push it back, right? Like, they start off against a pretty light schedule. Now you're into like the meat of the season. This is one of their toughest stretches the whole year right now. And whatever game it is, whether it's a younger guy contributing, early in the year, you have like the JV. Every game you've had like the insert player's name here game, right? You had the Poitras game against Anaheim. You had the JVR game against Nashville. Like, every single game, there's a new guy stepping up. And once you get more consistency from the guys, the usual suspects like DeBrusk, or the guys that we know are going to contribute like Pastrnak, like, you got a pretty good team on your hands, especially if that defense and the goaltending stays the way it is.
I do have 2 quick points to end this show on. Number one, Patra had a rough start to the game, but I thought he had a really good finish.
That final shift was bananas from him in the third.
Sicko mode. Yeah. Sicko mode. I mean, his ability to play with the puck along the wall, evade defenders while also being really tired. Again, just more proof that this kid is legit. Number two, and I meant to bring this up during the Bertuzzi discussions, I think there was so much pants pooping about Sweeney's signings over the summer. And I always want to say to people, they didn't have much space. You had to kind of go the money ball route. And so far it's worked. Like, is Van Riemsdyk this transcendent talent? No, I mean, we're not talking about, we keep saying, like, can he be in the top 6? And he really has not kind of solidified his spot, but he's produced on the power play. He's held his own, and he's $1 million a year. Or $1 million for 1 year, right? And you got Geeky, who is a solid value signing. And, you have these solid value signings instead of, signing Bertuzzi to a ton of money. And you've gotten more out of the value signings than, Bertuzzi's produced up in Toronto. So, again, not trying to be, the pro Bruin defender or anything, but, like, they worked with what they had, and they did a pretty damn good job of getting value pieces. I'm not saying these are MVPs or all-stars or guys you're going to lock up to extensions. But again, I think it's just value pieces, and they did a pretty good job of it. So, always fun to play the Leafs. Bruins have the Red Wings again, except they're in Detroit Saturday night. So we'll see what happens there. But Connor, what can people look forward to from you over at Boston.com and the Boston Globe?
Yeah, we've covered throughout the season with roster breakdowns, features, columns, all that good stuff every single game. So continue to please read our stuff over at Boston.com. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, X, whatever the hell it's called, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
I always forget to call it X. It's Twitter. That's what I will always call it.
Twitter.
I will always call it that. But that is Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your week.